Okay, the greedy approach that we have seen progressively builds the alignment by using pairwise alignments. And these pairwise alignments sometimes are between two sequences or sometimes between a profile and a sequence or between two profiles. But we progressively build the alignment by using these pairwise alignments. And during this progression, we have a certain order. The algorithm is called greedy because each time at every step, without looking at overall how the sequences are related to each other, it picks the one with the most similar score. So it's, in other words, that choice is our greedy choice, picking the most similar one to the sequence. In this case, it may not be a bad choice. That's a heuristic. All right. So therefore, this is a greedy heuristic. I mean, which may work in certain cases. But one thing that is bad about this greedy choice is that if there are sequences that are groups of sequences that are related to each other that are different from the other part, at some time we are going to need to combine them, and this greedy choice sometimes may give us some local optimum decisions, and globally it may not lead to optimum solutions. I cannot think about a mm, counterexample right now, but basically this greedy approach is not the best way to do. This cluster omega, which we are going to see, uh, takes into account these pairwise relationships in a more global sense by using a guide tree to guide the order progression of this progressive alignments. So greedy is a variation of, I mean, this actually progressive alignment. It says here a variation of greedy algorithm, but it's not variation. It's the general term uh, that is in which this greedy strategy is replaced by something else. Uh, the general name of these alignments, which starts building the multiple alignment from pairwise sequence alignments, they are all called progressive alignments. Okay, so which says a variation because we can have different strategies. Instead of the greedy strategy, we could have used, for example, this pivot sequence technique or the guide tree applied by cluster omega. We are going to see there may be different strategies other than this greedy choice to make this progressive alignment a better and more accurate one. The order of alignments could be chosen differently. So the general name for these alignments is basically progressive multiple sequence alignments. So the greedy algorithm, the progressive alignments works very well for close sequences, but it has difficulties for distant sequences because during the progression, when we make a certain choice to put a gap in the alignment somewhere, that choice remains as all the way to the end of the alignments. The decisions we make at the intermediate stages of the progressive alignment, they are fixed decisions. We cannot come back and change the gap and redo the alignment. That makes this progressive alignment really, we are always making some local optimum choice every step, which at the end may not be give us the best multiple sequence alignment score. Okay, so it uses profiles also to compare sequences. Now we're going to see a different algorithm, the star alignment algorithm, and we're going to see this one also in detail. But after that, the cluster omega, I'm just going to mention the main overall layout of the algorithm. And we are going to see certain steps of the cluster omega. We don't know how to do it yet. That will be our next topic after the midterm exam, which is the phylogenetic profile building, the phylogenetic trees. Cluster omega uses the phylogenetic uh, phylogenetic tree of given input sequences as a dendrogram, which basically relates the sequences that are given to us as input in a hierarchical manner. It will be something like this. So if you're given these k sequences, we will be creating a tree of these sequences like this, uh, a binary tree of these sequences, indicating some of these sequences may be similar to each other. This may not be a balanced tree like this. For example, these two sequences are really similar to each other. Then this third sequence is somewhat similar to them. So there is a group of sequences, 4 sequences that are different from these group of 1, 2, 3. So there's 4, 5. So these are two separate nodes. So there's a group of 6 sequences. There's another group of six sequences in my input sequences, which are grouped. So it shows a phylogenetic tree like this shows hierarchically how they're related to each other. And by using this as our guide tree, okay, so this is what Clustal Omega uses actually. So Clustal Omega or Clustal W. So this W is the Greek letter omega actually. Um, so you're going by using this guide tree. It it tells this guide tree is like a schedule for us. It tells, okay, you have to first align 2 and 3 together, build a profile, and after that you have to add to that 4, and separately in parallel you can start aligning this one and this one first to build a profile and add this sequence to that. So this tree basically tells us how to progressively use pairwise alignments to build the multiple sequence alignment. So if we can build such a tree by from pairwise alignment scores, so that's another thing. This is what we're going to see after the midterm. If somebody gives you the results of these k-choose2 pairwise alignments, if we have pairwise distances or pairwise similarities between these two sequences, by using them, can I build a hierarchical relationship of these sequences like this tree that you see here? This is what Clustal Omega does. It first builds this tree by using algorithms like neighbor joining. We are going to see this algorithm, the neighbor joining algorithm. We are going to see the UPGMA algorithm. Neighbor joining works really well. And Clustal Omega uses neighbor joining. By using this algorithm, we are going to build this tree. After we have this tree, this is going to be our schedule to combine to tell us how to combine pairwise alignments into a single final multiple sequence alignment. All right, so basically I also described how Clustal Omega works. But here's another technique, another heuristic. All these multiple sequence alignment algorithms, you may think that why do we have so many? I mean, these 3 are not the only ones. I mean, if you search, for example, the most popular ones, I mean, Clustal Omega is popular. There are other popular multiple sequence alignment algorithms that I know. There's Muscle, there's TCAFE that I know. So yeah, let's get a new slide. Yeah, so TCAFE. Was it muscle like this? Let me write it. Maybe I may have mispronounced muscle. A muscle and multiple sequence alignment algorithm. Yeah. So this one also is sponsored. I mean, maybe it's developed by EBI on EMBL. So European Bioinformatics Institute. EBI is European Bioinformatics Institute. So here you can actually paste your multiple sequences, and the muscle stands for multiple sequence comparison by log expectation. So they use some statistical methods, I think. So muscle is claimed to achieve both better coverage accuracy and better speed than Clustal Omega 2. So Clustal Omega also has a new version. Or TCAFE, so that's the other one. So muscle claims it's better than TCAFE and Clustal Omega. Probably TCAFE claims it's better than muscle and Clustal Omega. So you can, each one of them may be claiming it's better than. So this is TCAFE obtained. So its main characteristic is that it will allow you to combine results obtained with several alignment methods. So they're all, TCAFE is also, an implementation of TCAFE is also hosted at EBI. And there's Clustal Omega. It's also, yeah, so you can actually, so there's a link, this is a link in EBI. So yeah, they have also a Clustal Omega, which is the Clustal W. I think that's Clustal W was not the Greek letter. So this one is a new version, cluster omega. It uses guide trees. So here are some keywords. Let me zoom in here. Is a new multiple sequence alignment program that uses seeded guide trees and hidden Markov model profile techniques. So you see these keywords that we have seen, we already know what hidden Markov models is. On the slides that we talk about here, we were using the PSSM or profile representation to build those multiple alignments into profiles and try to align them. So what cluster omega does is that it knows that just using these percentages for every column or the plain profile representation is not that good. So why don't we use the profile hidden Markov model we learned too? So combine profile hidden Markov model with guide trees, you get yourself this technique called cluster omega. And there are many of, as you can see, there are many of these algorithms. Why? Because none of them produce optimal solution. They're all heuristics. So one heuristic may be better than the other in certain sequence settings. Another heuristic may have made better choices, better decisions on certain types of sequences. So none of them, none of these alignments algorithms are optimal in the sense that they may always have errors. So bear in mind that none of them is better than the other in all the cases. Okay, so therefore that's why we have many of these algorithms. And there's also a benchmark, a number of benchmark. For example, one of them is body-based benchmark. So there are competitions. So this belly-base 4, I think this is an old benchmark. Even this belly-base 4, I think, is like old. But these benchmarks are like difficult multiple sequence alignments that are challenging, that will make these multiple sequence algorithms get challenged, and different algorithms will produce different results. So it's like you can use these to combine. If you have a new multiple sequence algorithm idea on your own, you can actually implement it and compare your algorithm's performance with cluster omega or tcoffee or muscle in these benchmark data sets. For example, here they name these, they group these benchmark sequences with certain characteristics. For example, this one is a challenging case where we have an orphan sequence. What does it mean to have an orphan sequence? So there's a group of sequences. If you look at these are all phylogenetic trees that are shown in sideways. So this is the root of the tree. It basically, from here, what you should understand is that in the input sequences, there is one sequence which is very far away than the rest. So k-1 sequences, they are maybe very close to each other, but one sequence is far away from them. So this is an orphan sequence. If we have such a case, it's probably it's a challenge for these multiple sequence alignments. There is sequence variability in length. Also this one, for example, try to align a group of sequences in which some sequences are 200 base long or 200 amino acid long, while the others are 500, 600. So if you just click on one of these, there are many data sets even underneath them. So if you click on an arbitrary one of them, so there are different ways to visualize the multiple sequence alignment. Let's see this HTML format. So let's see this one. So here we see it's an alignment of 4 sequences. Not the K is not that large, but these are the sequences. As you can see, the gaps, one sequence is longer than the others. As you can see, we don't have gaps. So I have a notification from this website. It's 1H4Q. So so it's when you just select one of the sequences, it gives us PDB ID, which tells me that these are sequences with known structure. Okay, so another thing is, if these algorithms cannot align these benchmark sequences nicely, who aligned these benchmark sequences? Uh, any ideas about, for example, this is probably, if this is a ground truth alignment, who tells us that this is the ground truth alignment? Why is this the best way to align them? And by the way, this, what we see here on the screen, as I said, is a ground truth alignment, meaning that the other, if we have another algorithm, we try to get an alignment that looks as similar to this one as possible, because this is a benchmark alignment. Benchmarks, we should construct this by using some additional information that tells us that this is the true way to align them. This is the correct alignment. Okay, and what do you think is that information that tells us that this is the true way to align these sequences? I can think of a couple of answers. For example, maybe they did it by hand. Yeah, empirical, maybe some laboratory experiments. But actually, the other answer, which is probably the correct one, is when I click on this, we haven't talked about protein structures yet. But what you see here on the screen is a PDB, Protein Data Bank ID 1H4QA. So if I go to rcsb.org PDB and write this 1H4Q, 1H4Q. So that's sequence that we see here as the second sequence. It's this protein structure. Why is protein structure an important information here? Because structure is more conserved than sequence. If we structurally align, if you look at the structure of these four sequences, we'll see that in terms of structure, shape, they have some resemblance. And those structural shape similar parts, if you align them, probably they refer to these aligned regions. Although in terms of sequence, if you look at the sequence, there are lots of mismatches. Look at this part. A lot of mismatches here, but probably when they're aligned structurally, those have similar structural shapes, meaning that evolutionarily, these parts of the sequences are related. So they use this as their secondary information to, they use this structure information. So this Bali-based benchmark, for example, is probably obtained from these structural information. They're experimentally determined structures. So being empirical is that they are experimentally, by using X-ray crystallography or other techniques. I think this is an X-ray structure, I'm not sure. But yeah, but this is this protein structure. If you view it, I think if this looks like DNA, right? So probably this is a DNA binding protein. You see, it has two chains. So we were looking at one of the chains. I think this is like a homodimer. Yeah, a very good question. This multiple sequence alignment. The Bali-based benchmark obviously is using protein sequences. If we have DNA sequences that we try to align, how does this also apply to that? Usually, if your DNA if you're trying to align protein coding DNA sequences, you can translate those DNA into amino acids, and if it's structure is available, we can use that information. Otherwise, it will be really difficult in terms of DNA alignment, because we will not be able to use structure basically. So DNA is basically a double helix. So DNA sequence information. Can we also use DNA sequence information here? But since maybe we can. The untranslated, we can actually untranslate them back to DNA, and we may see some similarities at that level. A good idea. Yeah, that's another information that can give us that. But probably at the DNA level, we will see a lot more dissimilarities, because the translated versions, they refer to different amino acids. Either if there's no frame shift or anything, it will be really difficult to get similarities at the DNA level as well. But that's a good idea. I mean, to also use this information. Maybe there's a difference in amino acid, okay, QG. But if you look at the three-letter codes of the DNA sequences, maybe two of them or one of them matches. Okay, so yeah, the untranslated versions of these sequences may show some similarities, which may help us to align them better. I don't know whether any algorithm uses this idea, but it's actually a good idea. Yeah, using the DNA sequences of these protein sequences, you decode them to back to DNA, and also use the alignment in there to maybe guide your multiple sequence alignment of your amino acids. Yeah, it could be. It is possible. But yeah, this Bali-based benchmark, it's probably hand curated all these groups of sequences, subfamilies. If we have, for example, a number of sequences that we try to align, but there are groups of subgroups of sequences that are similar to each other in this. If we click on this one, yeah, and look at this one. Look at this. It contains a lot of sequences, not four this time, more than 20 sequences, and one of them is really long. I mean, look at these gaps. We still have all gaps except this one sequence. There's one sequence with no gaps there. Let's, so I cannot select the scroll bar. Why? Oh, because I selected. Oh, okay, this one says, oh, when you select it, it tells you which protein it is. So some electron transfer protein. So let me, yeah, look at this. The sequences are right here. Most of the alignment is here, the similar parts. Look at this. They share a certain pattern in certain regions. So there are a family of proteins, but there are differences, similarities. So it is a challenging case to find out of this very long sequence to identify it's this part that is similar to the other family members here. So this is a really challenging case, as you can see. This group, for example, that is at the bottom, six sequences, a group of six sequences, they share certain regions among themselves as well, which is not shared by the other sequences that much. So yeah, this is a challenge. So you can take a look at this Bali-based benchmark if you're interested, but that's one way to compare different sequence alignment algorithms, how good they are in obtaining the final alignment. So another simple alignment algorithm I want to discuss today is the star alignment technique. It's a very simple algorithm that you can implement on your own. Um, Again, it's a heuristic, and as I said, it chooses this one of the sequences. The restriction is that it chooses one sequence among those k sequences. Obviously, for example, if you run star alignment on that Bali-based benchmark, which had different group subfamilies, the subfamilies benchmark is going to be very challenging for star alignment, because maybe each subfamily first needs to be multiply aligned by selecting a different star in each of those subfamilies. But the original star alignment algorithm just is like this. We use a single sequence. A single sequence is selected as the pivot, as the reference sequence, or as the center of the star. It's called star alignment because it's the one sequence is at the center. We use the alignment of other sequences to this one. Okay, so this is our center sequence. These are our other sequences, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to k minus 1. So we use the pairwise alignment to this one to build the alignment. In other words, out of these k choose 2 different alignments we have, we only use k minus 1 of those alignments. Okay, so k choose 2 alignments we have in total. We ignore many of them. We use the k minus 1 alignments, which are to the center C. And when we have a pivot sequence like this, it serves as a purpose to combine the alignments. Having a reference sequence and the other alignments to this tells us where how the third alignment is going to be combined with that, how the fourth alignment is going to be combined with that, because we use the alignment of 3 to C. So it tells us, each of these alignments tells us where the sequence, the letters of this third sequence goes in this alignment. All right, so writing them under one after another is really easy, as we are going to see in one of these examples. So therefore, the first step of the algorithm is to choose the star. How do we choose the reference center sequence? Again, with a greedy heuristic. Choose the sequence which is most similar to the rest, because since we are going to be using the pairwise alignments only to that one, in order to reduce the potential errors, if the C is as similar as possible to the remaining, to all of these sequences, these pairwise alignments that we are using will contain less errors. Okay, so the idea is to choose C in such a way that it's most similar to the rest of the sequences. And how do we do that? We do it like this. We again first perform the k-choose2 alignments. Okay, we will be ignoring many of them. So we have these again k-choose2 alignments between all pairs of sequences, but we are going to be ignoring quite many of them. But we still need to perform this k-choose2 alignments to choose the center, because we are going to be using those results of the scores of those alignments. If the optimal alignment between xi and xj is this S, after we perform the pairwise alignment between I and j, there are k square or k square. The exact number is k times k minus 1 divided by 2. Okay, so k choose 2 is k times k minus 1 divided by 2, which is in big O notation or k square. So we choose C, which maximizes the sum score. Okay, so here's an example. We are going to start with this example where we have 4 sequences. This one does not tell us how S2 is chosen as the center, but if there's another one. Actually, I think did we use this sequence in another example? No, I remember this slide had those sequence scores computed. We can actually compute the alignment, all pairwise alignments ourselves, and we can see why S2 is the center alignment. Yeah, let's do that. So I'm going to have GIMP here, and first let me get a new slide, because the alignments are going to be very simple. These are really short sequences. Let's try to do that to understand the star alignment to the fullest. So for example, the alignment between MPE and MKE may be just this. So in order to compute the alignment score, we should have some mismatch, gap penalties, right? Let's have gap penalty -1. So I'm just using something arbitrary here. If different scores are used, this may result in different center to be chosen. The scores will change. Okay, so your scoring actually is really important. So mismatch is -3. Let's have match +4. Okay, let's see what this. So this is S1 and S2, and the total score here is what? 4, 4, 8, -3, 5. So the score of this is 5, right? 4, -3, and 4. So let's try to do S1 and S3. MPE, MSKE. So it's probably, so two gaps this is not the optimum score, right? If we have gap penalty -1, having 2 gaps is better than the mismatch penalty. So this is not the optimum way to align them. So let me change my scoring. I'm going to have the gap penalties -2. let's have gap penalty -2, which is going to ensure that 2 gaps is larger than mismatch. Okay, so if you have a mismatch, do not choose 2 gaps to represent that. I mean, if you have gap penalty -2, then this will be the optimal way to align them. If gap penalty was -1, this one, as you can see, has a better score, right? It will be 4, 4, -1, -1. It's going to be 6. This will be 6, and this will be 5, so this will be a better way to align. But what I did to make this one as the optimal alignment is to, if you have the gap penalty as -2, then 2 gaps will not replace a mismatch. Now, here MPE and MSKE, so probably something like this. With a score of 4, 4, 8, -3, 5, another -2, 3. So this will have a score of 3. S1 versus S4. Let's look at S1 versus S4. Yeah, which is, so it will be MPE, SKE. 4 -6 is going to be -2. 4 -3 -3 is going to be -2. So which other, I need S2 versus S3. Let's try to look at that. S2 versus S3. MKE, MSKE. I'm going to get a large score here, right? MKE, SKE, I have 3 matches with 12 and 1 mismatch, -2. This is going to have a score of 10. And S2, S4 is MKE, SKE, MKE, SKE. Second alignment, S1 with a gap. Which one? This one? Yeah, we have a gap in the second alignment. We have MPE aligned with MSKE, so you need to have a gap in the third position. And this gap could actually be in any place. I could have, this gap could be M gap PE, it doesn't matter. But yeah, but please ask any questions if you have any, all right? So it's important we get this, how we choose this center correctly and how we're going to use these alignments to combine into a multiple alignment. So this one is similar to this one, S1 and S2 and S4, 2 matches, 1 mismatch. KEs are matching, MS are not matching, so 4 plus 4, 8, -3, it's going to be 5. So this is also 5. And I have one final alignment left, right? 4 choose 2. How many alignments is going to make? 6, right? 4 choose 2. 4 times 3, 12, divided by 2, 6. So I'll have 6 alignments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One is one remaining, which is S3 with S4. Oh, this is also a good alignment with only 1 mismatch, 1 gap. So MSKE and a gap SKE. This is another 10, right? 4 plus 4 plus 4, 12, -2, 10. So I have these alignments. Now I can go back to my slide and try to compute the score, the total score for each of them one by one. S1, what is the score of S1 to the others? 5, 3, -2. Okay, so 5 plus 3 -2. This is the total score S1 has to the others, which is 6. What about S2? 5, 10, and 5. Right? Yeah, 5, 10, and 5. 5, 10, and 5, which is 20. So S2 should be chosen over S1 in terms of being center. S1 is not a good center. It says 6, S2 got a score of 20. Let's see whether we have to do this for all of them to see which one gets the maximum overall score. Let's look at S3. 3, 10, wow, and another 10. Actually, if these are the alignments, S3 should be the pivot. Then let's do that, and we are going to see whether we are going to get a better alignment than the one on the slide. So I'm doing everything correctly, right? So let's see. This one is 3 plus S2 to S. Yeah, another. Yeah, I think S3 should be a center here because it also has a match of 10 to this one. So it's another 20, not 20, 23. So it's better than S2. So let's look at S4. S4 has a -2. It's not going to work anyway. So S3 is going to be our pivot. So plus 5 plus 10, it's going to be 13. So look at these four total scores. S3 is the most similar to the remaining. Then comes S2, then S4, then S1. Okay, so we choose S3 to be our pivot. If we choose S3 to be our pivot, it means that, let me change the color now, I will be using this alignment, and this alignment to build my final multiple sequence alignment. So the alignments made against S3 are going to be used to build the alignment. So let's see how we do that. After this point, it's really easy. You just start with the first one, M, P, E, M, S, K, E. Okay, so this was the third one. We first write the first alignment like this. And let's look at the other one. How is it aligned? So this was MSKE. It's here, right? MSKE. MSKE is right here. So how are you going to write the second sequence against this one? Right? Just use the information provided by this alignment. M is aligned against this M. There's a gap here against this one, and there is a K here that is matched, and there's an E. So look at this. This is exactly the alignment that is here. And this is exactly the alignment that is here. Now the third one, a gap against an M, and SKE are just like this. Okay, so again, I place these SKE by comparing the alignment to this third sequence, which is MSKE. So the final alignment is this alignment where we have M in the column, K's are matched like this, and E's are all matched. So this is how we build the final star alignment. The reference sequence tells us where each of the letters are going to go, where there will be gaps or not. Sometimes we may introduce, if, for example, we didn't have this in this case, the third sequence did not have any gap in any one of these alignments. But if at some alignment, a gap is introduced in the third alignment, you may have to put this gap here and shift all the previously aligned sequences also by 1 unit. What I mean is that if, for example, there was a fifth sequence, imagine there's a fifth sequence which is something like this. MSKPE. Okay, imagine this is our fifth sequence, MSKP. I wrote it really badly. Let me write it. Redo pencil. Okay, so MSKPE. Imagine we have a fifth sequence that is like this, and its alignment to the third sequence was something like this. Okay, now how are we going to add this MSKPE to this one? It tells M should be aligned to here, S should be aligned to this S, K should be aligned to this one, and we have a gap at this point. So what we are going to do is we are going to take this, Let's see if I can do that. I think I'll be able to do that. Let me, is this selection? Yeah, rectangle select. So, oops, not this one. What we need to do is, we have to get these and move. Oh, it moved the entire thing. So I couldn't select this one. Anyway, so what we need to do is, let me just, yeah, I can cut and paste, you're right. Let me cut it and paste it again. Perfect, thank you. So what we need to do is, we need to move the entire thing. So I wasn't able to get the, let me select it here again. Yeah. We need to move the entire sequences here and flatten image, right. And introduce gaps. Let me get the pen again. Introduce gaps in all of them here against this P, and then add here. Okay, so this gap is introduced because this P was aligned against the gap in this fifth sequence. All right, so you see what we did? When we have to introduce a gap at some intermediate step here, we introduced that gap here, which also caused all the other previous alignments to put a gap against. So this P has a gap against it all in these alignments. Okay, and at this point, as we see, the choice of having P here was not good. Okay, star alignment, since it's a heuristic and it's progressive, we see that it doesn't always make the right choices. Since we had made this choice that P is a mismatch against this S in the in this alignment with S1 to S3, we cannot, unfortunately, move this P over to here to increase the score of the final alignment. Actually, if you give this alignment to somebody, they would just say, okay, why do you have this P right here? Okay, because we should have put this P against the here. That will make it better. If we had the sixth one with the same gap, if we have the sixth one with the same gap, we're not going to move it again. So imagine we have another sequence which is like, again, MS K gap E is now this time aligned, maybe, for example, aligned another sequence, for example, SKPE. Imagine my sixth sequence is SKPE. If its alignment to MSKE is this, I'm just going to write it like this. There's a gap against here, SKPE. So this gap between K and E, I am going to reuse that gap. But you have a point, actually. If every time we introduce a gap here, how do I know that this gap is the previous gap that was inserted here? If there's a gap, we are not going to do it anything. If there's 4 missing gaps we introduce, if the pairwise alignment between these two sequences give us a new gap that need to be introduced, we are going to do that. We are not introducing a second gap. The gap is not extended to in other words, in these alignments, there will never be, if we are adding a new sequence, a pairwise alignment will never have 2 gaps here in a pairwise alignment. So we will not have something like that. So we are going to put this P against this gap, which is already there. But we may have some exceptional cases where we may need to make up our own rules to make some decisions on where to put the gaps, where to put those characters. But in any case, the alignment to this reference sequence always will lead us, will tell us something, how to put this new sequence into this one, because this one is like a pivot. It's fixed. It serves as a reference to us to tell us where to put the other sequences are. And the alignment to this reference is used to put these other sequences in this final alignment. All right, so that's basically the star alignment idea. First, choose the center sequence by looking at all pairwise alignments and use the one that is maximum. So this one has chosen S2, which resulted in an alignment like this, which is actually worse than our alignment, right? if you choose S2 as the center, these S's are not aligned. Our alignment that we have performed by S3 being the center was better than, it obtained a better score than this one because we also had these S's that are matching. All right, this, if you look at these first four sequences, we have S matching here, and therefore I think S3 is more similar to the remaining. S3, based on our scoring in, parameters, match, mismatch, scoring, gap penalties, S3 should have been chosen as the center. Here, S2 is chosen as the center. Probably they had used a different scoring mechanism in which gap penalties and mismatch scores are different, which resulted in different alignments and therefore different scores, which maybe was a tie, ended up as a tie between S2 and S3. And the ties are broken arbitrarily, randomly, and maybe that's why S2 was chosen in this slide as the star, as the center of this star alignment. And if you do some running time analysis of this, first of all, we need for each pairwise sequence alignment between two sequences of length n takes O(n) square time. Since we have k choose two alignments to perform to find the center, finding the center takes this much time, and after that we just use these alignments. Actually, we don't, the remaining steps that we perform is less than finding the center. So finding the center dominates the computational complexity, the running time of this algorithm. It has an overall k square n square cost. Compare this to 2 to the k n to the k, right? I mean, the dynamic programming case. If we were to use the dynamic programming solution to align those k sequences, we would have an exponential complexity, and this is polynomial. This is what heuristics are for. We make sacrifices. We may not always get the best alignment, but we do it at the benefit of faster running time. So star alignment runs really fast in polynomial time. Polynomial in the number of sequences and in their length, and cluster W is also like that. These are all these heuristics, progressive alignments, they have some polynomial time complexity, which makes them practical to be executed on high number of sequences, with each of which with long sequences. Okay, so I'm going to stop here since we're out of time. I'm going to talk about this cluster W next. Actually, I already mentioned these steps. Okay, but on Thursday, I'm going to go over the remaining slides and finish the multiple sequence alignment methods. So in a sense, we have covered everything, but a couple of slides left for Thursday. If we have remaining time on Thursday, I will go over the midterm exam topics and again talk about what is included in the exam or not. And also, so you're going to continue and finish this on Thursday. And I will be happy to answer if you have any questions. We also have an office hour right after this, our regular office hour. So if anybody remains in the meeting room, I will be happy to answer your questions.